Hello Pattern Youth, how are you doing? For today's Cross Equals Love, I'm going to be talking about worship in the waiting. I'm going to start by reading the passage for today, just to catch you up to this point. Jesus has been tried in court, they found him guilty and they decided to crucify him. This passage is about his burial. So the passage is from Matthew 27 and it's verses 57 to 62 if you want to read along. As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea, named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he'd cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb. So it's quite a big passage. From reading it, I was really struck by the reality of what happened and what they did in the in-between time. So some of you will have lost people in your lives or had people who have been ill. There was a time in my life where I lost some significant people and it was a really tough time. Everything shifted. It was like my life was put on hold. And yeah, it was a really sort of tough season, and I think reading this passage actually kind of almost reminds me of that, and I can potentially relate to some of the feelings that they might have had in that situation. I was just struck by the reality. It says Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb. How do you think it would have felt for them in real time to be there? We know there's a happy ending, but in that moment, I doubt they did. Despite everything that Jesus did and said, they would have been shocked and they would have been grieving. They probably would have felt unbelief, confusion. They'd have needed Jesus more than ever, and the grief would have been real, but obviously he died. When I think back to the time that I lost some people in my life, and my life was on hold, I just got back from Australia. I trained in Australia and I was sort of starting almost a new chapter, and then this all happened. One of the main things that I did was worship, and I remember as things stood still and I was at a complete loss, the only thing that made sense to me was to worship. I'd sit at the piano and I'd literally play for hours and hours, singing and crying out to God, literally crying out to him, like, why has this happened? And feeling so raw, even though it didn't quite make sense potentially, somehow it helped. I learned that he is big enough and he can take it and he understands. When we worship in the waiting, it helps us to draw closer to God. We can take comfort in Jesus' words and his promises. I was also struck by the in-between, the way they would have been in kind of like the now and the not yet, thinking about what was to come. The current situation for them would have been really unexpected, and they were made to instantly wait. They needed to have hope and believe and remember what Jesus did and what he said. Worshipping despite the current situations doesn't make sense often, but even though you don't feel like doing it, it does make a difference. So thinking about all of that and where we're at now at Easter, it can be so easy to just go through the motions and miss what Easter's about, what Jesus did for you. But let me just encourage you to take some time, not to just go through the motions and forget what Jesus did, but to really try and connect with that and talk to Jesus, thank him for what he did and respond. There's an incredible worship song called All Hail King Jesus by Jeremy Riddle, one of my favourite worship leaders. We'll put the link in the description so you can easily click on it and have a listen. Why don't you just listen to that song now or whenever you've got some time and just think about what Jesus did. Hope you have a great weekend and hope you can tune in tomorrow. We're going to have an amazing Easter celebration and it would be great to see you there.